This is your girl, Black and Indigenous American. It is August 17th, Monday, 2026. So August 17th, 2026. The time is 2:23 p.m. Eastern Time. And yes, I have another video, okay? Yes. So this video is going to focus on Indigenous American enslavement. Not Indigenous Americans enslaving people, but actual Indigenous American people that were enslaved. Um, Now, I come from the Virginia mindset, and in some cases, North Carolina as well. So I'm just putting that out there that much of my research is primarily in those two jurisdictions. But anyway, I keep looking in this direction because I have a laptop where I'm going to share the screen in a few moments of some of the things that I've researched over the past few years. And yes, I have it on Facebook. Yes, I've, you know, talked about it in different groups, but I have yet to really kind of come back on YouTube and kind of explain it and share my screen and do all that type of stuff. So that's what this video is about primarily, is reminding the masses and reminding people within our communities that just because someone was enslaved, that does not mean that they were automatically a person that was African and or African American Black. There were peoples that were enslaved, that were Indigenous American, that were exported out of these states or out of the colonies, their 13 colonies, and dispersed in different areas. They were dispersed in the Caribbean through Louisiana, by way of South Carolina. They were exported out to Bermuda, to England, to to Western Africa and places like that. So helping people understand the export versus the importing of enslaved peoples is relevant and it has value and it is part of this country's history, right? So I'm going to share my screen for a minute and show you what I've been up to. So let me just get going here. Now, before I share my screen, I wanted to highlight one other thing, and that is an example of an Indigenous woman that I mentioned in my last video, where she fought for her freedom in the court system, right? Because she was Indigenous American, and after a certain date in Virginia, like after the 1750s, if someone was Indigenous American, they had the right to freedom. And so there's also this, rule or what have you, is that the child will follow the mother's condition, whatever it is, free, enslaved, whatever, poor, rich, whatever. So that child will follow the condition of the mother. So if the mother is Indigenous American and she have a kid, uh, let's say by a Black person or African American person or African person, Black African, right? I know that can be sometimes interchangeable, but there are, some differences. But if she has a kid by this person who may not be free, because there were free people of color, or I should say free Black people, because people of color is everybody that's not white, basically. So I just want to clarify that there's the free people of color, meaning everybody that's not white, and then there's free people of color, Black folks, which specifically Black people. Um, so anyway, I'm going to find what I was sharing on my Facebook page, and share that with you. So just give me a moment to find that, and then I will share my screen. The point is, she was like, "Look, I'm Indigenous American or Native American or Indian or whatever people called themselves back then. They probably called themselves based on their tribal affiliation. But for those who were not still connected to their tribal community, right? They, lost that language, they lost their nation, clan, what have you. So they may not necessarily go by their tribal affiliation name per se. So maybe they were documented just as Indian, or Native American. And in Virginia, 9 times out of 10, if they were mixed, they were listed as a derogatory term. Like I said, I'm not going to repeat it. It's in all the records. It starts with an M, and it's for people that were mixed with, you know, Indigenous American white, Indigenous American black, in many cases, white and black, and then in other cases, uh, Indigenous and black. I might have already said that, um, but yeah. So anyway, let me find what I'm looking for, and we can go from there. Here we go. Okay, Library of Virginia. It was basically on their website, and internet's kind of slow today. See if I can get to it. All right. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and share it, and so you should be able to see my screen. I'm going to blow it up a little bit. I'm going to read as well. So the Library of Virginia had posted this on their Facebook page, and this was back in 2019, the summer. It says former slave Rachel Finlay is our hidden heroine choice for the first day of the 19th for the 19th challenge. 19 weeks of amazing women in history to celebrate the passing of the 19th Amendment. Okay. So her name was Rachel Finlay, Findlay. So Rachel sued her owner, okay, Thomas Clay, on the grounds that because her maternal Indian grandmother's enslavement was illegal. Okay, let's pause right there. She sued her owner on the grounds that because her maternal Indian grandmother's enslavement was illegal. We talk about 2 generations later, and this woman was fighting for her freedom because her maternal, the mother's line, her maternal grandmother was enslaved illegally. Okay? In 1773, the General Court ruled that she was free, but the Clay family sent Finlay and her daughter west before the court reached its verdict, selling them to a John Draper whose family held them in slavery in Wythe County. I think that's how it's pronounced. Or wife, Wythe. Okay, we're going to just say wife. I may be butchering it, but whatever. So we're going to also pause there too because the Clay family wanted to get a profit off of their property, right? Thomas Clay's family. Instead of letting this woman go free, they decided to sell her like the stock market, right? Sell her so they can get in and get that money before they lose it. Okay. So years later, Rachel Finley filed suit in that county, right? Wythe County Court to obtain the freedom to which she had been legally entitled but had never enjoyed. Now, number one, no one should be enslaved anywhere, regardless of your race, but we're talking about the 1700s. And it was illegal for indigenous peoples to be enslaved around that time. They were enslaved before, but before the Africans, the Black Africans were enslaved. But in this time period in the 1700s, a lot of indigenous peoples that had the means, right, financially, they were going to court and they were very bold about it. Like, hey, I should be free. I should not be in bondage. Um, so after 7 years of delays, could you imagine 7 years of delays going back and forth to the court, and, motions and things of that nature, however way the court system was back then, going back and forth, spending money or whatever resources that they would accept for payment. 7 years of delays and difficulties in the transfer of the case to the Powhatan County Court. So now and then transferred. Also, like I said before in my video last week, pay close attention to the year that you're looking at in the county. Um, so Powhatan County, I didn't do any research as far as when that county was established or formed compared to White's County. But again, this case was transferred over to Powhatan County. And it's possible that that county was called something else prior to that or after that, right? As far as looking for records. She again won freedom for herself on May 13th, 1820. So the first time she was granted freedom, on paper at least, in 1773. And then again in another county, Powhatan County, May 13th, 1820. Families appropriately 40 children, grandchildren, and great grandchildren were therefore legally entitled to become free too. So the condition of one person on the mother's line dictated how the rest of the descendants from then on out were going to be treated in society. 40 children, grandchildren, and great grandchildren legally on paper were entitled to be free. It's psychotic, but it is what it is. And to learn more about her story, you can click on the link. So I'm clicking on the link now. And so again, this was through the Library of Virginia. And this is, I believe, her signature back in the 1700s. And yeah, locality was White County or White County. So let me just read a little bit of this biography, right? Rachel, born about 1750, let's see, around 1750, after August 1720, okay, was born into slavery early in the 1750s in the part of Virginia that later became Powhatan County. Her maternal grandmother was an illegally enslaved Indian woman, and her mother possibly had both Indian and African ancestry. So, if she did not have the African Black ancestry, and as far as appearance wise, I don't know what the woman looked like, she probably wouldn't have had as much headache because of her mixture, right? But anywho, Virginia law dictated that the children of enslaved women were also slaves, so she and her children were born enslaved. Okay. Early in the 1770s, Finley, her brother Samuel, and her young daughter sued their owner, Mr. Thomas Clay, on the grounds that because their grandmother's enslavement was illegal, they were also illegally enslaved. The General Court ruled in May 1773 that they were free, but the Clay family sent Finley and her daughter west before the court reached its verdict, and in 1774 sold them to John Draper. His family held them in slavery in Wythe County, or Wythe County. In 1813, Rachel Finley filed suit in the Wythe County court to obtain the freedom to which she had been legally entitled but had never enjoyed. After 7 years of delays and difficulties in the transfer of the case to the Powhatan County Court, she again won freedom for herself on May 13, 1820. Finley's approximately 40 children, grandchildren, great grandchildren were therefore legally entitled to become free too. Several of them successfully sued for their freedom, but others may have never known about the suit and its outcome. Finley became free, but how long she lived as a free person is not known. Wow. So that county is, this is Richmond, which is the capital of Virginia. And then you have Roanoke. And so this area here is right up under West Virginia. So that's where that went down. So I think Powhatan County, let me see, Powhatan County. Let's see where that. So Powhatan County is west of Richmond. Yep. So it's in this area, right up under Goochland. I don't know if Goochland is part of Powhatan County. And that's the James River right there. Okay. So anyway, Powhatan is like right up in here, right? If we're looking at the map, pull it out, right up in here. And oops. So, from like here all the way over here is where she was sent. So from like close to um, Richmond area. So the Richmond area all the way over here, where, in my opinion, I'm from Virginia. This side of Virginia, I would say southwest of Interstate 81, which is right up in this area, right? Anything west of that is going to be straight up West Virginia, basically. That mentality and how they treat people that specifically are not white or white appearing, I should say. So all this area up under here, I consider that West Virginia, to be honest with you. All that right up in the here, up under West Virginia, I consider that West Virginia, as far as their mentality and all of that. So you can, or maybe you can't imagine all that nonsense that woman had to go through to be all the way out here versus where she was kind of close to the capital of the state, where possibly there could have been, you know, more opportunities to have a voice, near the state capital. But anyway, so yeah, that's that. So I wanted to share that because this is just one example of many cases where people in the 1700s were actually going to court to gain their freedom that they either once had or never knew, or they find out and be like, hey, I should not be in bondage, um, whatever the case may be. But she was able to go back and forth to court, and she kept pushing. 7 years later, 7 years during that time period is something, right? Um, So there's that. So I just wanted to kind of bring that to your attention, about Rachel Finlay. Again, the Library of Virginia had her information in there, and it's just amazing that that happened. I mean, people obviously commented under, and this person was like, as a genealogist, Joanne Thompson. As a genealogist, I'm honored to hear the story. Another person says, I am honored to read these words today. Another person said, I just read a book about Elizabeth Mombert Friedman, who sued for and won her freedom in 1782. I wonder how many others did this. So brave. Thanks for sharing. There is a Draper Valley in Wythe County, likely named for the Draper family. Um, and the comments keep going on and on and on. I know Emma. Emma says Mary Kegley wrote about Rachel Finley in her book Free and Chains. Also see uh, this uh, this link here. So I mean, I don't know if this link still works. This is 7 years ago. I'm gonna go ahead and attempt to see if it works. Websites change all the time, so let's see if it will pop up. And Emma was also the one helping me with a lot of genealogy work. Um, she was big on telling me to look at the free people of color documents. Okay, so my protection, computer protection, said that was risky, so I'm not going to open it. But anyway, Emma, she was basically saying, look in those free persons of color documents, record records and things of that nature. For the most part, Brunswick County, Virginia, is what she was talking about. Like looking at the tax records, looking at the court records, specifically court records pertaining to enslavement and fighting for freedom and all that. So that was a gem that she provided me with, I don't know, about a decade or so ago when I was reading through different documents and sharing on my Facebook page. And she and I are Facebook friends, so she probably commented, shared with me. This person says there are many Indians caught and returned to persons. They were Indians, but all brown people were not runaway slaves. Um, and it goes on and on and on. But again, this is something that I found very interesting. So now I'm going to find something else that I was sharing on my page, my Facebook page. So let me go find that real quick. Real quick. Let's see. So what I was also doing too, I was going to ancestry.com and I was actually looking in Native American, Indigenous American, well, they wouldn't say indigenous. That's just not how they referenced documents. Um, but I would look for Native American keywords, Indian keywords, in a lot of the records, and I came across one, and it was fairly recent, like 18. The census was 1860, I think, and it lists, obviously the slaves, maybe by their first name, maybe not. And this was in Virginia. The county actually was Charlotte County, I believe. No, Halifax County, Virginia. Which Halifax County, Virginia, is like northwest of Mecklenburg County. It's adjacent to it, Mecklenburg County, Virginia. And this record had an owner whose surname was Oliver. And so this woman, which I'm going to try to find real quick. Okay, here we go. All right. So let me share my screen again so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay. All right, so this is what I shared. This was like, 6 years ago, basically. August 6th, 2023. And this was the 1860 U.S. federal census, right? And again, with census records, it just depends on the census taker and how they thought this person looked, and then they would just jot it down the way they assumed, right? It wasn't always the accurate. It wasn't always accurate. So anyway, Schedule 2 slave inhabitants, right? This was in Northern District, Halifax County. The state was Virginia, as you can see here. This was, 1860. And this was enumerated July the 23rd, 1860. So, anyway, I said, not sure what her name was, like her first name. Maybe she eventually took on the Oliver surname, because that's what some people did when they were let go or whatever. They would choose potentially the surname of their slaveholder. Sometimes they'll just choose a surname that they thought sound, established or special or something like that. I mean, I've come across records where it's everybody in the household after slavery ended, like census, let's say census record 1870. Everybody in the household now has a different surname, but they all were together, their family, their sisters and brothers, but yet all of these people, like some of them, they just picked whatever surname they wanted, basically. I said, not sure what her name was. Maybe she eventually took on the Oliver surname. But here you can see a 55-year-old enslaved indigenous woman indexed in the 1860 slave records. Okay, 1860 slave records. And obviously, they didn't, again, reference indigenous, but I'm going to scroll if I can. Let's see. The name of the slave owner was Oliver, as you can see right here. And the number of slaves, let's see, one, name of slave owner, and then the number of the slave. Trying to see where. Okay, so Harrison Oliver, the gender is female, and it has an Indian, right? Um, so she was 55 right here. Color, IND. So that person was referenced as IND or Indian. Um, Again, in 1860, Halifax County, Virginia. And her slave capture or whatever was Harrison M. Oliver. So that could help somebody out there right now that's watching my video. If your surname is Oliver and your folks come from, Halifax County, Virginia, then yeah. So, and this was in the Northern District in the county. So Northern District. And just to show you, where it is, all right? Okay. So all of this right here, hold on. I don't like when that red dotted line goes away because it's hard to see. But anyway, it touches the border of Virginia and North Carolina, right? So all of this right here, all the way up here, even close to, look, Clarksville, my stomping grounds. So apparently all of this right here is considered Halifax County, all this, until you get to the bridge in Clarksville. As far as the water, the body of water, which is funny because You remember I was talking about Two Rivers, my nonprofit I co-founded. Well, the name derived, I thought of it, but having the two rivers combining. So we have Dan River, and they meet up, and then this right here is Stoughton River. So Stoughton River and Dan River meet up right here, which form Roanoke River, right? And Roanoke River basically goes on and on and on until you get down to uh, way down here. I want to say that's Tar River. Don't mind me going back and forth like this. Okay. So yeah, Roanoke River, it spills out. I want to say spills out in the Pamlico River, which is right here. And then all of this is the Pamlico Sound. Then you have the Outer Banks, barrier islands. But yeah, so I feel like Roanoke River spills out into Pamlico River, or also known as Pampico River, because that's how it was pronounced and all of that back in the 1500s. But today's, the way they spell it and pronounce it, they say Pamlico instead of Pampico, like with a P, Pampico. So anyway, back up here. So as you can see, this right here is Halifax County. And I think of South Boston, and I also think of Halifax, the town of Halifax, whenever I think of that county. And as you can see, it kind of like, comes down here. So technically, Occoneechee Island, which you don't see here anymore because it's inundated basically, is underneath the water now. Um, Occoneechee Island, Tudelo Island, all of that up in here, technically, as far as the body of water is concerned, the center part of it is considered Halifax County, which I didn't even know that. I thought all of this was considered Mecklenburg, but the waterway, that's kind of like where, it separates from Mecklenburg. So anyway, that's what that is. So, um, but yeah, so I thought that was interesting, in Halifax County that they technically wrote down IND in 1860 census in Virginia. Even after all of that wall, well, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. Anyway, so we don't know per se what indigenous or tribal affiliation that this woman descend from, but I have a good feeling it is probably Saponi Okinichi or something like that. Probably Saponi Okinichi because of the territory. But again, slaves were bought and sold all the time. So for me to conclude with confidence that her indigeneity came from the Saponi Okinichi people, that's stretching it. It's possible, sure, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that is a tribal affiliation. She could have came from North Carolina. She could have came from Louisiana, because there were slaves going up and down, from Virginia to Louisiana as well, as far as exporting them out into the Caribbean, like Haiti and all of that, and vice versa. So who knows? But ultimately, they wrote Indian on a piece of paper. Could she have been mixed with white and black and looked Indigenous American? It's possible. And the census taker assumed. So he, 9 times out of 10, it was probably a man, white man. He wrote IND because she looked Indian. But then again, maybe she spoke her language. I doubt it, but maybe she spoke her native tongue. Maybe she had customs about herself that stood out from the other enslaved peoples. Maybe she just looked like a Native American. Her ancestry just looked very straightforward. I don't know. But I saw this and I thought I would share this with folks on my Facebook page, and they were definitely um, appreciative, basically. Um, and then another thing I wanted to share on my page is see if I can. Okay, here we go. So I'm gonna share my page again. All right. So I post this February 2024. Again, I post all the time things that I learn about different things from all of the researches I've been doing over the years. And so I just don't typically do it on YouTube as much like I used to. But, I'm going back. So this is February the 3rd, 2024. And I wrote, Mecklenburg County was organized in March 1st, 1765, having split from Lunenburg County in 1764. And remember in my last um, video, I said that Lunenburg came out of Brunswick. So there's Brunswick, then there's Lunenburg, and there's Mecklenburg. So as a result of passage of an act by the Virginia General Assembly. So, due to new settlement and population increases in the area, legislature divided Lunenburg into three counties. So we have Lunenburg, Charlotte, I forgot about Charlotte County, and Mecklenburg County. Charlotte County is right above, um, right above Mecklenburg. So Charlotte County is like right up in this area, right here. That's Charlotte County. Just so you can place it in your mind. So this is what I screenshot here. A wheel book. This is another thing which is sad, but also helpful when you're looking at records and trying to find, your people. So looking in the slave owners and their inherited descendants, those who inherited the wealth and benefits and privilege of, the system of slavery. Um, In Lunenburg, the Will Book 1, page 39, William Mays, to my son Maddox Mays, one Indian slave named Judah. So that's a gem for somebody whose folks are from either Charlotte County, Mecklenburg County, and Lunenburg, right? Judah is a name that not many people have, right? So that can definitely help somebody narrow down some records. To my son Joseph Mays, three Indian slaves. You got Jack, Jimmy, and Harry. To my daughter Frances White, one Indian slave named Phyllis. To my wife Mary Mays, during her natural life, meaning while she's still alive or whatever, the use of my Indian girl slave named Nancy. Now I want to pause there because why did he say my Indian slave, girl slave named Nancy? Why did he say my Indian girl? The other slaves, he didn't say my Indian slave named Judah, my Indian slaves, Jack, Jimmy, and Harry, my Indian slave, Phyllis. He didn't specify the sex or anything, right? But as soon as he says my wife, her natural life, the use of my Indian girl slave named Nancy. What that sound like to y'all? And did Nancy have some kids? If you know what I mean. To my granddaughter, Mary Maddox Gills, one Indian slave named Daniel. This was November the 8th, 1748. Proved, I guess recorded, in the records October 1st, 1751. Or maybe he wrote it November 8th, 1748, and he passed away, and then it was in the records October 1st, 1751. Not sure. But that's something to, again, pay attention to, the dates. 1765. 1764. Well, you know what? Let me look a little bit closer. Hold on. All right. So Lunenburg was formed when? According to Wikipedia, it was 1746. 1746 is when Lunenburg was formed. It was established in 1746. Remember, it came out of Brunswick County. 1746. 1746. So even though this will, I'm thinking, was dated in 1748, being so close to 1746, I was still looking Brunswick County for other wills and other property records for this particular family, the Mays. Brunswick County and Lunenburg County. Again, that's just a tip that I've learned over the years, is counties that are adjacent to the county today that you're looking at and you're going back trying to find records, right? Um, Pay attention to the counties near it and also across state lines. Like Mecklenburg County is right on the line, for North Carolina. And so if you're looking at, mm, looking at Mecklenburg, right? As you can see with the red dots, right? That's Mecklenburg. Again, that's where I'm focusing. Mecklenburg County, Brunswick County, and Greensville County, Virginia. Um, so basically, all of this right here, all the section right here, this right here is what I'm looking at. And so underneath those counties, which are in North Carolina, you have Granville County down here, right? You have Halifax, well, Vance County, and then you have, I want to say Warren County. I want to say Warren County, Vance, and Granville County in this section here. Um, all right, so let's see if I can blow this up. Maybe, maybe. Okay, actually, it did blow up. And I'll blow this up. All right, you can barely see it, but anyway, so we got Mecklenburg, Brunswick, Greenville, and then again, adjacent to that in North Carolina, you have Granville, Vance. I should spell it out a little bit more. Um, this county right here, I'm trying to remember if that is Warren County. I want to say that's Warren County. And this is a 95 South right here for those who travel through the state and you utilize 95 on, as you can see, you're going through the territory. But anyway, and then 85, which is 85 South, is um, where the Okinichi trading path um, was, and it's still in use because now it's an interstate. But that went through Brunswick County, Mecklenburg County, Virginia, then it spill over into Warren County, Vance County, Granville County, and then eventually Durham County, uh, not quite Wake County, and that's like the Raleigh area, whatever. But but yeah, so again, this is what I'm looking at. This is also called Palmer Springs area. Uh, so that's my stomping grounds basically. Uh, Obviously, there's a lot of state, right? I think North Carolina has 100 counties, has a lot of counties. Um, so there's a lot more to the state than what I'm talking about. But I just wanted to share with you where I'm coming from as far as my thoughts and things of that nature. Again, I would check the Mays, that surname, if you kind of um, if you if you're part of that surname or have connections to that surname. Also, White. His daughter married, I guess, a white, so she got slaves. And then Giles or Giles, Giles. You know, that granddaughter, her surname was Giles. So again, there was another slave sent to her, which was Daniel. So just, you know, these are small nuggets, gems, by looking in records that we typically psychologically possibly are not prepared to look through it without taking it personal, because it is personal. Obviously, it's a personal journey, but just knowing that that was commonplace, and to try to not get clouded by reasonable emotions, right? With that, next thing I wanted to share is this website right here: Free African Americans in Colonial Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Maryland, and Delaware. And I've said this in the past in other videos, but this is one of those websites that I stumbled across off and on over the years regarding people who were enslaved, um, that were not necessarily Black, African. You know, they were something else. They were indentured or whatever, but they all kind of like were thrown into um, the African Black category when it came to servitude. So just keep that in mind for those who are trying to find relatives that weren't Black, you know, back during struggle, right? Struggle times. Um, People were indentured and, you know, enslaved or whatever, but they were coming from other places. They were transported from the Caribbean. And, you know, you got to think about, okay, the people that were in the Caribbean, they weren't all indigenous per se. A lot of those people were from other places. And, you know, there was like this pit stop, I should say, in the Caribbean, and then they gather up people and then continued with the importing them into what we call now the United States. So yeah, so this right here, freeafricanamericans.com. Um, that's the website, and it brings you to this. Um, And the hard copies of Free African Americans in Maryland and Delaware and Free African Americans in North Carolina, Virginia, and South Carolina can be purchased from the publisher. Now I'm gonna click on this link, but again, this link might not be working or whatever like that because this website been up for several years. Okay, we're getting somewhere. Um, I don't see. Yeah, it says page not found. I don't see the actual book. So you probably have to do a little bit more digging to find it. You might have to go to, a library, state archives, or something like that to find it. And this website, like I said, is old and it's probably not kept up. Like I said, the link is not working as far as getting us directly to the book. But let me dig a little bit since I got your attention. So, okay, so here's some images. All right, so this is it right here. So again, I had to dig a little bit, but I was able to find it. $60. Um, and this is volume one, sixth edition, volume one, published in 2021. So not that long ago. Then there's this sixth edition, third volume set, volume one. This is $105. Same author. Yeah. So anyway, you can go to genealogical.com and find this book if you wanted to have it for yourself, because you know how websites can be and digital things. Sometimes you need a tangible hard copy just in case, one day there's this blackout or something and you can't get to these digital records. Things like that happen. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of dig a little bit more for you to uh, see that. And looks like these are some of the photos that were in that book. So yeah, that's what I did. I just Googled the name of it and then all this popped up. Okay. Um, so I'm gonna go ahead and get out of that. I'm gonna go back to this page here. So this is great. There's colonial tax list, Virginia personal property tax. Remember, enslaved people were treated like cattle, was treated like property, basically. That's how they were treated. So tax records will have a list of that type of stuff. And it also includes a list of taxable free persons of color. So people that were free, they had their limitations, obviously, living in a white racist world, but they paid taxes. And this is from 1782 to 1890, right? So then you had, I clicked on it, and so the first thing I see here is Robeson County. Robeson County is in North Carolina. Robeson County is kind of dominated, not, I said kind of dominated. They are dominated by the Lumbees, the Lumbee people, who were recently federally recognized. If you were living on a rock, that's what happened back in December of 2025. Um, so anyway, that's the first thing that I saw or whatever. But taxation of free African Americans in colonial Virginia, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to click on that. And so, as you can see, these are all the cases. And, I'm just kind of going to glance real quick, see what I see. That's North Carolina, South Carolina. Um, all these surnames. And of course, you can go back and look at this yourself. freeafricanamericans.com/taxation.htm to get to this page. Um, We got Lancaster, Louisa, Southampton, Henrico, Princess Anne County, Charles City County, Surrey County. Now, Surrey County, well, I should say this. Brunswick County came out of Surrey County. Now, I think I touched on that um, last week briefly. But again, when you're looking at these records, you got to pay attention to these dates. Um, let's see, November 1758, the grand jury presented Joseph Barkley or Bartley, John Banks Jr., uh, Jazz Barley, John Ely, Thomas Thorne, John Defferts, uh, W.M. Walden, I guess that's how you pronounce it, Thomas Clarity, Thomas Simmon, or Simmon, yeah, Thomas Tan, David Walden, Thomas Wilson, Edward Peters, for each and every of them not listing their wives according to law supposing the said persons to be the M word. So that's how they're identifying them, at least in this county, in 1758. Let me also, real quick, I always say real quick, I know. I'm stopping sharing, but I'm gonna share my screen again because there's something else that I wanted to tap into. And tapping into would be what did they call that? Okay, I know what I need to do. I need to go back to my group, Two Rivers page, because I mean some of the stuff I share with the public, and then some of the stuff is with the board members of Two Rivers, so we can understand certain things, and then we can share it with others. So the thing I was looking at was, let me see if I can find it. I need to search for the keyword. The keyword. Let me see. Hold on. Hold on. It's coming back to me. Okay. Here we go. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and share this. All right. So the M word that was utilized in the 1700s record. Where is it? Right here. That's how they were identified in 1758. All these guys here, free people of color, taxable and all that, paying taxes, right? Um, they identify them as a specific group or whatever, just a mixture, right? Um, most of us, as I said, were labeled M word in the 1800s. So this is ancestry.com that you're looking at, a screenshot. Um, records identify American Indians, like how were they identified? So just a history lesson real quick about records and indigenous identity on paper, versus them being identified as a part of a particular tribe, right? So there's the political side, and then there's the individual. So keep that in mind. It says few American Indians are identified as such prior to 1900 census. Few American Indians are identified as such, not identified as American Indian, but identified as their tribal affiliation, their nation, that type of communal aspect of it, not as an individual. For exceptions, see the call out box, which is right here to the right, which says American Indians in pre 1900 census. Okay. And so I'm going to go ahead and read that real quick. The 1900 census is the first survival census that sought to count all American Indians, whether they were living on federal reservations or in general population, right? And Virginia is going to be general population for a lot of them folks. And remember what I was talking about, 1700s, and how people were labeled as a slave or whatever, and how Rachel Finlay was fighting for her freedom in the records and papers and stuff like that. This is in the 1700s, y'all. So remember that. And then here you have a notice that says few American Indians are identified as such prior to 1900 census. Ponder on that for a minute. Think about that. Let that digest. So when people were stripped away from their tribal community for whatever reason, warfare, whatever, and they didn't stay with the actual tribe, maybe the numbers were extremely low and they had to assimilate to survive. They were stripped from their identity as far as a tribe, and they were just labeled the M word, Black, Negro, or just Indian. Okay. Then it says from 1790 to 1840. This is still slavery now. American Indians are not identified by race. From 1790 to 1840, they were not identified as race. So what did they identify as? Right? On paper. If you're not white, the white census male record takers are going to put you down as what? Let that digest for a little bit. Again, we're talking about Virginia right now. I can't speak for other states, but Virginia and more so also North Carolina kind of follow suit as well. You have to think about that. You have to really digest that. 1850, people are identified as white, black, or the M word, as you can see on the screen what it is. To view the list of questions asked in the 1850 census, you're going to click on that blue link, which this is a screenshot. I'm not clicking on it, right? That's why I circled those two dates or two lines there. From 1790 to 1840, they were not identified by race. By 1850 census, people are identified as white, black, or mulatto. Sorry I said it. I know it's derogatory. I have to remind myself not to say it. The M word. 1860, Indian Territory is included at the end of the Arkansas census, but American Indians are not usually identified. So that's not a usual thing, but they're identified as American Indian. And then in 1870 to 1880, this is when you're going to start seeing American Indians in the general population, not on reservations, but just general population, those who did not stay in the tribal constraints of staying in the community, reservation living, and all that, right? They survived outside of that, right? But American Indians are not usually identified. Okay, sorry. Let me drop down. 1870, 1880. American Indians in the general population are identified as I or IN, which means Indian. Some federal reservations and Indian agencies are identified, but the schedules mostly list white or non-Indian residents, so white or black, right? Um, and I can keep going, but I just wanted to kind of highlight all that. And then within the comments, I also added 1850 census, free inhabitants versus enslaved categories. So, okay, I did click on that link. This is how they identify as far as color, which is ridiculous, but I mean, that's how eugenics people work, right? They always care about somebody's color. Um, it says this column, again, Schedule 2 slave inhabitants. Slaves were listed by owner, not individually, listed by column number. Enumerators recorded the following information. Right, we're going to drop down to number 6, color. This column was to be marked with a B if the slave was black and an M if they were the M word. So this also included Native Americans. Again, this was the slave inhabitants right here that I clicked on. I think I clicked on this one right here. So that was that was the 1850 census right here. That's what I clicked on. So that's why I put it in a screenshot of that in the comment section. Let that marinate for a minute. Then I screenshot something else. In 1870, enumerators recorded demographic information on the following topics organized by column number. Again, I'm going to drop down to number 6, color. Enumerators could mark W for white, B for black, M for the M word, C for Chinese, not colored, right? C for Chinese or some Asian category, or I for American Indian. So in 1870, they could separate those who were American Indian from those who were mixed, aka the M word. So if there is an Indigenous American person who's also mixed with a bunch of stuff, depending on the numerator and what they thought, they would put down whatever they thought the person was. And you know, genetics and DNA and all that, it's like throwing dice. You know, you can have the same parents. If there's a mixture going on in that bloodline, all them kids are not going to necessarily look the same. They're going whatever the dice was thrown at them, that's how they're going to come out. So you can have one household and this white enumerator person on the census records can jot down whatever they thought that person was. So if they look more American Indian, whatever that is, you know, they will put I. And so maybe that lady that was owned by someone by the name Oliver in Halifax County, Virginia, in the well, let me take that back because that was 1860. But they still referenced her as an IND, which means Indian, in 1860. So whoever that was in Virginia who did that in 1860, well, this is 1850. It's possible that maybe in 1860 they changed the rules. And see, I didn't click on this one right here. So I just clicked on 1850 and 1870. That's where those, you know, those screenshots that I have in the comment section. But anywho, it's possible that the 1860 and the 1850 kind of followed the same rules. But according to Ancestry and their chronological history lesson here on the records, they're saying I or IN was utilized generally for American Indians starting in 1870. So 1870, you know, they were using white or WBMC and then I. So It is what it is. And just a FYI, during slavery, the Commonwealth of Virginia had the most so-called mixed people, the M word, out of all the states. Out of all the states, out of all those census records, the Commonwealth of Virginia had the most people labeled as the M word. And every decade, every census record, the same person may be something different on paper, depending on how they look and what the census taker or the enumerator thought they were. So, you know, that's how records are not always as accurate as some would believe. Sometimes those records aren't found because they weren't meant to be found. Sometimes those records that are found, and there's that coveted label on the record, is not always accurate as well, right? So, again, in this society, paper has more weight than actual facts. Um, and so, whatever's on the paper that benefits the person who has the paper, they're going to run with it. I mean, can you blame them? Can you blame them for running with something that could benefit them on paper that may or may not be accurate? But for those who aren't benefiting, and for those who are not finding the records because they're not actually accurate, or they find in records that don't have the actual accurate information, they're not benefiting from it. The ones that are benefiting from it, um, they put a lot of weight on those records because those records are benefiting them, right? Um, so anyway, um, I think that's what I wanted to talk about. And then I just stumbled across this website before I started recording this, and I thought this was interesting. Stolenrelations.org. Stolenrelations.org. Millions of Native people were stolen from their communities in the Americas, meaning all of the hemisphere, not just the United States of America, between 1492 and the 1900s. This site begins to tell their stories. And I just saw this website, so I don't know what's in it and all of that, but I'm going to comb through it. And I'll probably have um, another video pertaining to indigenous slavery, right? Those who were enslaved, and they were also indigenous American peoples. Um, this is a topic that is very close and dear to my heart because, again, at least in the state or Commonwealth of Virginia, if a person is labeled as a slave, they are automatically, in the mid to late 1700s forward, they were automatically labeled as Negro or Black, right? So in that case, a lot of those records afterwards depicted um, half truths. If I'm being sincere about this, half truths. They're not showing the bigger picture. One particular group of people ancestry overshadows another one. The more slaves you have, the more money. The more indigenous American people you have on paper, there's more money that has to come out of their pockets. So keep those numbers low and keep the enslaved numbers high. So if only Black people, African Black people, are the only ones that are allowed to be enslaved after the 1750s or whatever, guess what happened? And I mean, and you can really kind of see the parallel of the dysfunction, the parallel of the um, theft and the hypocrisy and just crooks in general. It's a repeated pattern. Where can I make the most money? How can I make the most money? Do what you have to do. Make sure we have the permits, the zoning. Let's get into the realm of influence, pay money, gaslight, and do all of that so we can make a profit. It's about profit. So the more slaves you have, the more pocket, right? More in your pocket. And the more Indigenous American, Native American people, originals, aboriginals you have, we're going to lose money. So let's change the records and let's make sure that these people are labeled as slaves and keep them enslaved, right? Until, obviously what happened and then the other people still were still enslaved in Texas and all of that. So that's why we got Juneteenth and everything. And some people butt hurt about that. You know who those people are because we're celebrating Juneteenth. Whatever. Get over it. As they say, we should get over the horrific remnants of hatred and enslavement and human trafficking, which we will never forget. Because there has not yet been any appropriate reparations at all in this country for enslaved people. Not a mass amount across the board. So until then, you can still keep hearing people talking about it. Ain't no getting over, and we remember, and it is what it is. So anyway, this is the website, and so I'm going to dive deep into this and probably report back and go from there. But whoever set this up and whenever this was done, I am grateful for you, for the team of people. Brown University, I guess Brown University is very much involved in this website. All right, Brown University. Okay, Providence, Rhode Island. I'm thinking Narragansett, folks. Yeah, I know about the Bermuda. Um, Indigenous people were enslaved and sent to Bermuda, and I know they have a powwow in Bermuda um, every couple of years. Last time I checked. Um, yeah, this is the capital, Hamilton, I think, Bermuda, and the locals typically live out on this end of the island, which I have yet to go all the way out there. But when I was on a cruise, I was able to get all the way up to the capital, which is right up in this area, but I was unable to get all the way to the end. Number one is because it was very expensive, like a one-way trip from uh where we ported or whatever, or docked, I should say, all the way to the other end of the island was like $75. Like one way on a taxi. And so our our shuttle took us all the way to Hamilton, and then we had to get on a city bus, and it just would have took all day and some change to get all the way over there and back, and it was just a lot. um you go on trips, make sure you have a lot of money set aside just for travel. Because you thinking you getting on a boat, a cruise, all inclusive or whatever. But it's like once you get to this type of island with the stuff that I wanted to see and partake in, is all the way on the other side of the island, you know. Anyway, so Bermuda has uh its share of yeah. This is cool though. I mean, I'm gonna definitely look into this. Wow. A slave owning person who was in Summer Islands, Bermuda, Joanne Powell, 1661. She enslaved Tabitha, a girl with age, a girl with age given as girl, and was the spouse of Robert Powell. Tabitha. And then they got another hyperlink that takes you a little bit into it. Um, this is an original document. Ooh, this is good. They really did it up. Huh. Okay. Let me see if I can zoom in. All right. Transfer of Indian girl. Know all of whom it may concern that I, Robert Powell of uh, something in Summer Islands, Cooper, for and in consideration of the natural love and affection that I bear unto my dear and loving wife, Joanne Powell, and for and in consideration of great care and pains she hath taken in bring up of my Indian girl by name Tabitha, have and by these presents do freely give unto my said wife Joanne the said Indian Tabitha during her lifetime, according to a promise and gift of the said Indian formerly made to my wife, above said, by me, Robert Powell, aforesaid. And in case my aforesaid wife shall survive me, that then she, my said wife, shall have free and full power to give the said Tabitha, as likewise George and Kate, my Indians, parents of the said Tabitha. So okay, so Tabitha and her parents is George and Kate. Give them to our son John Powell, or to any other of the best deserving child or children begotten by our bodies. So obviously he could have had a bunch of kids by somebody else, right? But deserving child would be the children that he have with Joanne, basically. Um, as she my said wife in her discretion shall conceive best to deserve, basically what I said, or to stand in most need of, in witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and seal February 13th, 1961 or 62. And after my decease, the said Indians, which is Tabitha, George, and Kate, are to be given to our children in manner and form as aforesaid, basically what he said, deserving children. Signed Robert Powell in the presence of Henry Tucker, the secretary. All right. This is just one example. I'm going to comb through this website. You best believe that. Yes. Thank you to Brown University and all those who are very much involved in this project. Again, Stolen Relations, Providence, Rhode Island, Brown University. This is good. This is good. Let me see. So that was Tabitha. I just picked just randomly, a section. Again, that was Bermuda. And then let's just zoom in because I'm just being nosy now. So this is the Outer Banks right here. This is Catawba, the area in Virginia. Um, this is this is Rhode Island. I mean Roanoke Island, North Carolina. This is Dare County that I'm pointing to. And then all of this right here, Hyde County, and it's kind of tilted a little bit. What is this? Okay, so that's Northampton. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the Nansmans are in that area. The Nansmans are officially federally recognized tribal nation in Virginia. So I think They're in that area. Then this one here, Charles from Blunt, North. Okay, so that's North Carolina. Two, what is this? Farmville. Okay, Farmville is not far from where I'm from. Huh. Brown. And then this right here, Farmville. I want to say this is Richmond area. Yeah, that's Richmond. Okay, so that's Richmond. This is probably Petersburg. Okay, that's Chesterfield. Never mind. Okay, Chesterfield. Chesterfield. Okay, so this is Richmond, Chesterfield. This is probably along 85. I'm not sure where that is too. This is Dinwiddie. Okay, so yeah, this is 85 South. So we're getting into Dinwiddie. Number five is, I want to say that's Brunswick County. Because again, this right here is Clarksville. As you can see, the two rivers coming together right up in here. So this would be like Clarksville and all of that. And then number four, we're in North Carolina. Boot, North Carolina. So yeah, so this must be the actual county line. This is Northampton County, North Carolina. So this is North Carolina. This right here, I got a feeling this is probably Brunswick County that we're looking at. We got a Robert Ruffin, and then Enslaved is Kate. And I'm gonna click on Kate's name. Runaway. Okay, so also news clippings about runaways too is another, idea to look at. I mean, this person they have her down as, or have this person down as Negro. Um, this is the original. So, runaway about, I don't know, something last. A Negro fellow named Caesar, commonly called Indian Cosser, and his wife Kate. They were formerly the property of Robert Ruffin. Um, well, I'll look at the transcript. Um, let's see. Caesar. They were formerly the property of Robert Ruffin, deceased, and sold to Colonel William Johnson of North Carolina, but now the property of the subscriber living near Brunswick County Courthouse, and that's in Virginia, who will give a handsome reward to any person that will apprehend the said Negroes or give such intelligence that I may get them. James in the bowl, whoever that is. So that's Brunswick County, right? Then there's another one here. We have a Kate. Um, he bought Kate and enslaved Kate. And this is a runaway. Okay, so this is the same person with Caesar. Okay. And then here, described as a Negro. Again, I think this is associated with Caesar. All of this over here. Yeah, all of this is Caesar. Okay. So all of this is Brunswick County, Virginia. And then down here is North Carolina. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Mm-hmm. Ooh, so I think this is like Elizabeth City, I think, North Carolina, which is Pasquahonic, I think is the name of the county. Um, so here it says Their sued Captain Richard Sanderson in an action of trover and conversion and declares for a certain Indian man slave called John Conway, or Conaway, which in ye first day of April, so April 1st, uh, the said plaintiffs, I guess, were possessed of as their own proper goods and chattels, and yet afterwards. This is a court record. The 1713. His name was John Conaway, Indian man. I feel like this is. I feel like this is somewhere like near Elizabeth City, North Carolina. Hmm. Yeah, because this right here is Dare County, and this is Currituck County right here, and I feel like this is near Elizabeth City, if not in Elizabeth City. I feel like this over here is like Edenton. Uh-huh. And then over here we have a lot going on. We got a lot going on. King Blountstown, North Carolina. Hmm. This is, I believe, the Mattapunget Mesquite people, Beaufort County, right? And so we got a Thomas Blange, an unfree person. Hmm. I'm surprised. Okay, okay. Beaufort County, North Carolina, I believe, is the Mattapunga Mattamuskeet people, indigenous population. Um, so this is great. This is a deed of gift. So this particular information is coming from land property, and in a deed of gift, um, property again, as enslaved people, they were treated like property, would be part of, you know, a conveyance of property, like a house or whatever. So this one again, Beaufort County. I know there's Beaufort County in South Carolina, and then there's Beaufort County in North Carolina. So in North Carolina, they pronounce it Beaufort, spelled the same way, but you know. Anyway, this agreement made ye 28th day of November in ye year of the Lord 1701. So 19 not 19 1701 November 28th, between William Barrows Esquire, ye lawful attorney of Captain Nicholas Thomas Jones, both of illegible. Okay, I guess whatever that is, they couldn't figure it out when they transcribed it. But in ye county of Bath of ye one party, and William Thompson of ye county aforesaid bricklayer of ye other party, within a four white ye saw, I don't know what that is. William Barrow Squire, ye attorney of ye Captain Jones aforesaid, uh, covenant of bargain and agree with ye aforesaid William Thompson to be ye overseer of four servants belonging unto ye aforesaid Captain Jones, John Matson, Thomas Blange, Peter an Indian, and ditto a Negro woman, allowing unto ye aforesaid William Thompson one share and a half of corn, tobacco, and all other sort of grain. Ye shall be made upon ye said plantation, and during ye time of ye abroad, there of ye, or yea, after said Thomas William Thompson, as is hereafter mentioned also, allowing unto ye after said servants good sufficient diet and clothing. Hmm. So Thomas got four servants belonging unto ye, Alfred said Captain Jones. So there's a John Matson, a Thomas Blanche, a Peter, an Indian, and a ditto, a Negro woman. So let me stop there. Why did they not spell out the so-called race of John Matson and Thomas Blange? But yet with Peter, they said he was an Indian and Ditto was a Negro woman. So by me just reading that, I'm thinking, okay, as usual, if someone's white, they don't usually spell out that the person's white. But there's something else. They feel the need to spell it out. So maybe John Matson and Thomas Blade were indentured white servants, right? Because it did say, four servants belonging unto ye aforesaid Captain Jones. John Matson, Thomas Blange, Peter an Indian, and Ditto a Negro woman. So that's something to think about too, like reading between the lines or whatever. You got to do a lot of that in the records like this. But again, this was Beaufort County, North Carolina, 1701. Um, and it says he was a servant of William Thompson. So they didn't necessarily say enslaved, but Thomas Blanche was considered a servant. So I'm thinking he was an indentured servant. That's what I'm thinking. Oh, and then you click on a person and you can keep going and searching and everything. This is good. This is good. So anyway, I got away from, you know, me trying to keep this a short video because it's going on 2 hours, but this is good. Right. So anyway, so yeah, that's North Carolina. This is today's 95. I'm thinking this, and then this is 85. And then you can keep going and on and on and on. This right here, number 4. This is, oh, remember I was talking about wife, Virginia? um, I think her name was Rebecca Finley. Anyway, this county right here, Robin. Robin versus King. Maybe this is the same daggone person. Hold on. I'm not reading all of that, but this could have been like a descendant of hers that kind of went through the same process. Um, hmm. The appellates brought suit in forma pauperis against the appellee by whom they were held in slavery to recover their freedom in the circuit court of wife. The proceedings and pleadings are in the usual form. Hmm. I'm not going to read all of this, but I'm going to read some of this paragraph. At the trial, the counsel for the appellates filed exceptions to an opinion of the court, which stated that they introduced as a witness Catherine King, widow of William King, deceased, to prove that she had heard him say that Esther, the mother of the plaintiffs, was an Indian woman. She, the witness, being then the wife of King. Hmm. That these declarations were made in the presence of the family and they were not requested to keep them secret, and that they were repeatedly made by him. And it was admitted that the defendant claimed the plaintiffs as slaves by purchase from William King. Hmm, interesting. Of course, you can pause and read this, at your leisure. Uh, but yeah, this was Robin is an unfree person who was in White, Virginia in 1830. He was the child of Esther, was brought by William King and was enslaved by William King. 1830. There could be some relation to, again, the lady that I was reading about earlier. Um, but yeah, this is good. This is good. And all along the eastern, a lot of this is right along the eastern seaboard, right? Where a lot of the transporting is going on. Remember, I was talking about New Orleans? Well, I was saying Louisiana, but you know, you got all this going on down here because a lot of them folks were transported to Haiti and, you know, there's just a lot of that going on. And then, of course, Central America, and then we got Brazil, which Brazil has a lot of, I think, outside of the continent of Africa, as far as sub Saharan Black Africa, Brazil has the highest number of um, diaspora Black people in the world. And it makes sense because obviously, they're coming from West Africa. Then you have um, the currents in the ocean back then and how close it was, right? How close it was to South America, you know. So that's kind of how the wind took them, and then they ended up over here in the Caribbean, and then eventually up, the eastern seaboard. And again, South Carolina had a large um, amount of people coming and going. Um, yeah, see, like this is crazy, but this was a huge export as well as import. Um, Obviously, we know about the import, but the exporting of the indigenous peoples and slavery. But yeah, I mean, just look at this. This is South Carolina. I'm just gonna pick one. Slave owning person who was in Charleston, South Carolina in 1724. Charles Worth Glover. So anyway, I am gonna stop sharing my screen. That was one of the things that I'm very passionate about when it comes to genealogy is to try to connect the dots with those who have Indigenous American ancestry, but it has been overshadowed by some other genetic makeup they have, by their appearance, how they're perceived by others, and ultimately their lived experiences, right? So you have all that, but ultimately, what I am about is to honor the ancestors, specifically the indigenous ancestors that have been overlooked because, for instance, they were mixed and or they were enslaved and kind of was just lost in that system, and they have a voice, and being that we are descendants of those peoples, some of us have this urge or this desire to honor them by finding them. And some of us will find them spiritually, obviously. They may not be on paper um, because of how records were um, handled. Those who had money, power, land, all of that, their records are very straightforward. They took better records of people that had property, people that paid taxes. Those who didn't, those records are uh, less detailed, far and in between. Um, it's more challenging to find those records. But ultimately, that's one of my passions is to put more emphasis on indigenous enslavement, to not forget about those relatives that were enslaved as well as being indigenous. And some of them may have assimilated in those spaces that society thought they looked like, you know. And so in some cases, they assimilated and they found acceptance and love and all that in those spaces. And so their descendants look less and less like they once looked. But the DNA is there. The heritage is still there. The culture wiped out, language wiped out, in some cases, spirituality paths wiped out. But many of us, we are taking the time to honor their lives the best way we know how. And I appreciate again Brown University and probably other projects out there through, nonprofits and schools and stuff like that that are preserving the history. There's too many forces out there that is trying to cover up, ignore, rearrange whatever the history here on this continent and in particular in this country. So yeah, there's 250 and all the celebratory stuff for those who benefited from this system. But I believe it's important for everyone to understand, even those who are transplants to this country, in today's society, everyone should learn about the full spectrum of what happened on this land and what still is happening and the parallels to that. You still have people benefiting from the oppression of others. It may look different from 300 years ago, or it may not. There's still human trafficking going on, and there's still um, forces in place that are vampires, basically. They suck the life out of certain people so they can stand tall and things of that nature. So, again, when it comes to this record business, genealogy, and stuff like that, it's an unfortunate truth that, again, the more slaves, the more profit. The more Indigenous American people with sovereignty and rights and all that, they lose money. They will go bankrupt. And in today's society, if there were a such thing as a financial reparation for enslaved peoples, including indigenous enslaved people, including potentially indentured servants, right? That may never have gotten out of the debt for whatever reason, you know, because there are people who are descendants of those people and they're still living in poverty. Hundreds of years later, and descendants are still living in poverty. So I say this because I care about it. I take it personal. I descend from those who were disenfranchised and in many ways still disenfranchised. Um, and of course, you pick yourself up by your bootstraps, as this saying goes. You do what you need to do. You follow the rules, um, and you be the best version of yourself, regardless. I am a huge uh, person who believes in still doing what you need to do and being the best version of you. But you know how much more enjoyable life could be if you take that characteristic of being your best and applying it with what's owed to you? Do you know how magnificent your life would be? And if you are a good hearted person, how much good you can do for others? So I'm going to leave you with that. Um, I'm not going to create a schedule when I'm going to be on here and talking and all that because I know people do that and they tell their followers, hey, I'll do this once a week on Sundays. I'm not doing that because I'm not getting paid. If I was getting paid, that would be different. If you want to like my video, you're more than welcome to. If you would like to subscribe, that would be great as well. If you would like to donate, if you like my content and would like to see more of it, like to hear more of it, right? Then I have a Cash App, which is $ BIA or BI American. That's Black Indigenous American, basically. Um, you can do that as well. Um, that information will be in the description box if you want to give, donate, or whatever for this type of content. No, I'm not flashy. No, I don't do special effects. No, I don't have videos that catch your attention with all this graphics and editing and all of that. Don't do that. I don't have the time to do that. And again, I'm not getting paid. Things might get better if I was getting paid to do this type of stuff, but I just speak and I share because I enjoy it and I would like to share what I've learned. Um, and so this is me. I am Black and Indigenous American through and through. So you could have been anywhere, you could have been watching anybody, but you chose to watch. Why? Me. So I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. Stay blessed and be a blessing to others. Toodles.